What is your take on the housing needs in Faribault, and how might we as a city inspire more housing development?
I believe affordable housing is greatly needed in Faribault, and workers need homes, and factories and businesses need workers. I think we can, as a city council member, I would look to inspire developers to come in and build developments that would be potentially tax incrementally assisted and or other incentives to get the job done, because I think that's part of city needs.
Well, my belief is that housing is an issue best handled by the private sector. Historically, anytime the government has gotten involved in housing, it's caused rent prices to become artificially inflated. It decreases the quality of living, and my proof of that is looking no further than to the slums of Minneapolis. In the 1950s, some government official thought it was a good idea to provide this, quote, need, and all it did was create a big mess. The best thing we can do is reward good behavior and communicate with developers to get them to spend their money on what they think would work. Hold landlords and tenants to a higher standard, and the rest can occur organically.
Well, housing is always a tricky issue because it depends on what kind of housing you're talking about. The first thing the city needs to is look at the needs of the city. Are we talking low income, or are we talking market rate housing? The big question is, what kind of inventory do we have right now of the housing that is in most demand right now in the city? So therefore, I hate to say that we need another large study, but yes, we need to take a look at the inventory stock of what we have. So housing is always a hot button issue.
I know there is a shortage of affordable housing for low income and for fixed income families in town. Kind of on a side note, I have noticed that there's a lot of apartments in the downtown and other places in Faribault that seem that they're either empty or need to be really renovated or cleaned up, and or just bring up to code. And I think the city needs to work with the landlords and do code enforcement, though the ordinances for housing are followed. As far as creating new affordable housing, I personally believe that it's the city's responsibility as part of the infrastructure. We're talking parks and roads and utilities. I think the city is also responsible for housing. Now, whether the city does that themselves or work with independent private developers, that is the preferred way to go. And we need to come with incentives for developers to come into town and build more affordable housing. If we cannot do that right now, I know the city has done this before, where the city invested themselves and developed housing projects, and then later on sold that back to private investors. But we need to take a look at how to work with private developers and see how we can incentivize them to build affordable housing in town.